Okay, so here we are. We're gonna start with the example of a written mediation. In this case, it's aimed at level C1 and it's a written mediation. Okay, so here we go. I would like to show you first the task. Okay, so let's read it together. And this is the information. So it says your Scottish friend Louise is quite concerned about her teenage son Mark. He has been acting rather strangely lately, and your friend is unsure whether her son is truly suffering from depression or rather going through a typical teenage phase. The other day you came across this leaflet, so you want to tell her about the possible signs she should watch out for. Send her an email with the relevant information. Write about 70 to 80 words. Okay, so this is the task itself. It's very important that you spend some time reading the info carefully and highlighting and marking the most important elements of the task. Okay, now this is the task itself. This is the leaflet that you encountered, okay? Since I am aware that it's not very clear and it might be a little bit small for you, I'm going to show you now a little bit bigger with a zoom the exact information. Okay, so let's go step by step. First, that's the introduction. Okay, it says teen depression more than just moodiness. Being a teenager can be tough, but it shouldn't feel hopeless. If you have been feeling sad most of the time for a few weeks or longer and you are not able to concentrate or do the things you used to enjoy, talk to a trusted adult about depression. Okay, so this is the general heading, the general introduction. Let's move on to the left column, okay, where you have these facts. It says, do I have depression? Do you often feel sad or even empty? Have you lost interest in activities you used to enjoy? Do you find yourself withdrawing from friends and family? Are your grades dropping? Have you thought about suicide or harming yourself? Depression looks different for everyone. You might have many of the symptoms listed above or just a few. So basically this is just a few questions that you should ask yourself to detect or to determine if your child is suffering from real depression. And the second, the final part of the leaflet is, how do I get help for depression? You're not alone and help is available. You can feel better. To get help, talk to a trusted adult, such as your parent or guardian, teacher or school counselor, about how you've been feeling. Ask your doctor about options for professional help. Depression can be treated with psychotherapy, also called talk therapy, medication, or a combination of medication and talk therapy. Try to spend time with friends or family, even if you don't feel like you want to. Stay active and exercise, even if it's just going for a walk. Physical activity releases chemicals such as endorphins in your brain that can help you feel better. Try to keep a regular sleep schedule and eat healthy foods. So this is, sorry about this, but this is the only way that you can actually read the information as if it was face to face, no? As if you had the leaflet yourself in paper. Right, so what do we do now? Now, after reading everything, we have to pay attention to what am I asked in this task, okay? What do I really need to do? So I need to reread the information again and, find the part of the activity that tells me what to do. And it's very clear that what I need to do is I need to look for possible signs that your friend should watch out for. Okay, so this is the most important part of the heading. Okay, I don't need to tell my friend about the introduction. I don't need to tell her ways to get help. No, I need to help her identify what signs are dangerous. Okay, so having that in mind, I'm going to concentrate only on this part of the leaflet. Okay, on the questions to help my friend decide if the child is suffering from real depression. Okay, so once we've done that, there are 3 questions that we need to ask before we begin. Number 1 is, who is the reader? So who am I writing to? Okay, in this case, it's my best friend, it's one of my best friends. So obviously, my writing or my mediation task, the way I express myself is going to be completely different as if I was talking to someone who I hardly knew. Okay, the second question you're going to ask yourself is, let me see, what information am I going to choose? Okay, this is something that we have discussed earlier. Okay, out of the whole leaflet, which is the most important information there? Okay, and what am I going to choose to be transmitted to my friend? Okay, and finally, I'm going to think of possible ways to rephrase the information. What synonyms can I use so that I avoid repeating the original words in the leaflet? As you know, one of the most problematic things about mediation is that we need to have a wide variety of synonyms and a nice way of expressing things in a different way with my own words. Okay, so synonyms play an important role here. Okay, what else? We're going to begin then, since she is my friend and I need to write to her, I'm going to begin with a greeting, obviously. Since it's an email, then it's going to be an informal greeting. We can say, obviously, basic things such as, how are you? But if you have been watching my videos for some time, you would know that I'm not a big fan, especially if you're in the C1 level. This is your time to shine, so I'm sure you can find better ways to say hello. So how about saying, how are things, sweetie? So in this kind of greeting, you are showing that you know your friend, that you have a familiar relationship, and you showing your informal language. Okay, or perhaps you can say something like, how's love? And pay attention, because both of them have contractions. So remember that contractions are a very characteristic sign of informal language in English, so don't be afraid of using them. Okay, so once you have said hello, you can move on to the introduction. How are you going to begin? There is no point in saying straight to the point, okay, here are my few tips, okay, and we don't say anything. It's always important, if you have the time, to make reference of the background, okay? So perhaps you can say something like, yesterday I saw a leaflet about teen depression and I thought it could help you. Again, I'm not very impressed, because this is supposed to be for a C1 level. So maybe we can, just substitute or replace basic words and transform them. So how about saying, yesterday I came across a leaflet. To come across something, it's a very nice phrasal verb which means to find something by surprise or by chance, okay? And in that way, you are boosting your vocabulary a little bit, okay? So yesterday I came across a leaflet, or maybe you can say, yesterday I stumbled on a leaflet, which is basically has the same meaning, okay? So I just found something by chance, okay? So go ahead and try phrasal verbs. Now, instead of saying about, okay, a leaflet about teen depression, maybe you can replace them with a nice, word such as regarding, okay? So I came across a leaflet regarding depression, which means about, but it's a little bit more advanced. Then, instead of saying, and I thought it could help you, which there's nothing wrong about that, but let's make it a little bit better, perhaps you can say, a leaflet regarding depression that it could come in, and I thought that it could come in handy, okay? It means exactly the same thing. I thought it could be helpful. So again, we are using informal language with a phrasal verb, come in, and also the informal word handy, which means useful. Okay, so now we move on to the next phase of the activity, which is, if you remember, the moment to choose the right information. So I know that I'm going to concentrate on these questions, but I need to decide now which ones am I going to address. Okay, obviously in 70 to 80 words, I cannot mention all of them, so I need to make a decision and, just make up my mind about which ones am I interested in. In my case, I have decided to talk about, for example, this one. Have you lost interest in activities you used to enjoy? So let's move on to the main body of the activity, okay? How am I going to start talking about the most important things? I can say something perhaps such as, first, find out if he still has the same hobbies. There is nothing wrong with this sentence, but again, it's time that we do a little bit of magic and try to transform the basic original sentence into something a little bit more advanced. So perhaps, why not, I can replace the connector first with the connector for starters. Why? Because for starters is a very nice informal, colloquial way of saying the same thing, okay? So you can say for starters, and then instead of saying find out, you can just expand the sentence and say something like, it would be interesting to find out. So by this way, you are adding more information, and also you are using a contraction, which is, again, I told you before, a characteristic of informal language. Okay, so it would be interesting to find out whether he no longer does his all-time favorite hobbies. As you can see, I have transformed the original sentence a little bit by adding more connectors, more grammar, and more vocabulary appropriate for the C1 level. Okay, so I'm adding here a conditional sentence. I am also using a conditional with whether, and also the expression no longer. And at the same time, I'm using a more advanced adjective, which is all-time favorite. Okay, so think about ways where you can take the original idea that you have and then make it a little bit more improved. Okay, so again, there is nothing wrong with the first sentence, but I am transforming it a little bit and making it a little bit better. Okay, as you can see, the color green is for connectors, the color grammar refers to grammar, and the color blue is for vocabulary. Okay, now let's continue and go to the next idea. You can tell your friend, pay attention to his behavior at home, especially if he's distant with the family or even with his friends. Okay, so I have decided to talk about that question about withdrawing from family and friends. Okay, again, nothing wrong, but maybe I can do it better. And I can say something like, growing apart from his loved ones is definitely another worrying sign. Watch out. Okay, what has happened here is that I have improved my grammar by using a verb ending in ing, a gerund verb, which is the subject of the sentence. Okay, so growing apart from his loved ones, with the word loved ones, I'm including family and friends. Okay, and then also I have decided to use an adverb such as definitely, okay, which also makes my grammar a little bit more sophisticated. And then I'm using the adjective ending in ing, a worrying sign. Okay, finally, I have used a phrasal verb, watch out, which means basically to be careful, but also I have included an exclamation mark, which is, again, another characteristic for informal language. Okay, use exclamations because you're showing your feelings. Okay, and the final question that I want to address is the one about grades at school, okay, or his performance at school. So maybe you can say something like, okay, in conclusion, is his behavior at school worse? How is he doing with exams, right? But again, we need magic, okay, to make it better. So we can say, finally, now, instead of pay attention or be careful with, or, be observant of, you can say, keep a lookout for changes in his school performance, okay? To keep a lookout for, it's a very nice expression that we use when you want someone to pay attention and really identify something that might be dangerous, okay? So this is a nice expression that you can use. Keep a lookout for changes in his school performance. So instead of saying his behavior at school or the way he's behaving, maybe you can use the word performance, which is also used for, apart from performance on TV, etc., films. Also we say school performance, the way you are doing at school. And then this is a very interesting grammatical structure that you can use that I'm a big fan of, which is question tags. Okay, remember that a question tag is an affirmative sentence that you might use, and at the very end you make a question. Okay, but the question includes the auxiliary used in the original sentence. So you can say, you haven't noticed a fall in his marks, have you? Okay, it's that our Spanish, no, oye, no te has dado cuenta, no te has dado cuenta de que haya bajado sus notas, ¿no? O sus resultados, ¿verdad? So by using have you at the very end, we are making our grammar, go one more step ahead, okay? Also, I am using the word a fall, okay, instead of a drop. and also marks as a synonym for great. So here is what I was telling you before. It's important to have some synonyms prepared for some key elements or keywords so that I can later on replace them by something similar. Okay, so again, green is for connectors, blue is for vocabulary, and finally the color orange is for grammar. Okay, what else do we have? The ending. Okay, it's time to finish my email, so you can say something like, okay, what do you think? Please take him to the doctor if you have any more questions. Bye. Okay, so remember, this mediation task is not interested in providing help, okay, to your friend about what doctor she needs to go to. No, basically is concentrate on the questions that you need to ask yourself to decide if he's suffering from depression or not, okay? So instead of saying something this basic, again, magic time. Instead of saying, what do you think? Why don't you use the fantastic synonym reckon, okay? Which is a little bit informal synonym for think, right? So what do you reckon? What do you think? And then you say, okay, anyways. Bueno, de todas formas, lo que sea. Anyways is a way of changing the topic. If you spot, okay, instead of if you notice, if you see, okay, if you spot any of these, please visit your GP ASAP. A lot of initials, okay? But let's go word by word. So spot is a synonym for notice, okay? If you see, if you notice, if you realize, okay? But it's a little bit informal and it's an advanced synonym, okay? And then instead of saying, okay, go to the doctor, take him to the doctor, why don't you use the GP, which is the initials for general practitioner, which is another synonym for doctor, okay? And as soon as possible, very fast, quickly, we say ASAP, okay? ASAP, ASAP, as soon as possible. And then, of course, it's always nice to know what's happening with your friend's child, so you can tell her, keep me posted, okay? Please let me know what happens. But keep me posted is a very nice informal expression that you can use to end your email, okay? Right. So it's time to reveal the secret sauce for a great mediation activity, and this is something that is very similar to a cooking recipe. So in order to have the perfect dish, it's important that you put on the right ingredients in the right order and in the right amount, okay? So let me show you what I mean by this. Now, the secret sauce for a great mediation activity is, of course, the vocabulary. Your vocabulary is essential because it needs to be rich. Rich, I mean, it needs to have a wide variety of terms, okay? It cannot be repetitive and it cannot be basic, okay? It needs to be appropriate to your level. So what I was showing you before with the original sentence, those were completely correct sentences, but perhaps they were a little bit basic for the C1 level, okay? So choose rich, different, and appropriate to your level vocabulary. And remember, synonyms are the secret, okay, for all these. It's important that you find ways to paraphrase and you avoid repeating the original words from the text, okay? So always practice at home, making lists of synonyms or ways to say the same thing in a different way with your own words, okay? It's a very important activity. Okay, so after the vocabulary, of course, we have another important ingredient, which is the connectors. Connectors help your text easy to follow, easy to understand. If there are no connectors, okay, the text is very, very plain, very basic, and the transitions from one idea to the next are not so smooth, okay? So make sure that as much as you can, you use some connectors, okay? So apart from connectors, it's important to mention grammar, of course. Grammar is everywhere and also it's included in your mediation activities. So very similar to vocabulary, your grammar needs to be rich, in the sense that it needs to be different, it needs to have a nice variety, and it needs to be appropriate to your level again. So try to find more complex structures that can be used to express your ideas, okay? And finally, the mediation strategies, okay? So every time you face a mediation activity, you need to do certain strategies, okay? In this case, we had to select the right information. So you were given a nice big leaflet with lots of data, and you had to select the most important, the most relevant details, right? So we forgot about the ways to get help, we forgot about the introduction, and we concentrated on the questions, okay? So we are selecting what is the best or the most important thing. And finally, the second mediation strategy was paraphrasing. So obviously you have a leaflet with very specific, very straightforward questions, but we don't want to repeat the same words. So it's important we use synonyms and paraphrasing methods to express the same idea with different words. Okay, so it's time now to, when we finish our activity, our mediation, to reflect, okay? I want you, the next time you do a mediation activity, to play the role of a teacher, okay? If you read your own activity, what would you think of it? I want you to reflect on what vocabulary you used, what connectors you employed, what grammar, what strategies, okay? Because it's important that you kind of evaluate yourself. You need to assess your work, right? So let's do a little summary together of the stuff that we used for this activity, okay? In terms of vocabulary, we have used different phrasal verbs, informal words, colloquial words, and of course, synonyms, right? So this is what is going to give me the extra points for my mediation activity. The same happens with grammar, okay? What have I used? Well, in this case, I have used, for example, question tags. I have used adverbs and conditionals, so not bad, right? For 80 words. And finally, what connectors have I used? It's not always easy to use connectors, but in my case, in our case, we have used anyways, for starters, and finally, okay? So it's important to do a mental summary of what you have been what you have been able to use in your activity to decide, is this good enough or does it still need a little bit more magic?
So that was it for today. I hope that this video was helpful and that you got some tips and some good ideas to implement on your next mediation activity. You can go to the description box below and download the PDF with everything I said in this video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!